All right, so panels, these are always fun. I hope this one's going to be fun for my sake, or else I'm going to look really bad. So it's up to you guys to make me look good. So this sharing economy thing, we use that term pretty loosely. We oftentimes refer to what's going on as on demand. It's not the same as sharing, but oftentimes sharing is on demand and vice versa. I think this focus is definitely more on sharing, although what's interesting about this panel is there's a pretty broad spectrum of business models, of stages where the companies are in terms of how much capital they've raised, how many customers they have. The service offerings are actually pretty different as well. One might argue we've got a pure form of capitalism up here, or free markets, and we also have hints of Marxism up here. And so it's going to be hopefully a fun panel where we can cover a pretty broad spectrum of questions. As he just mentioned, I co-founded SherpaVentures. Shervin Pishavar and I started a year and a half ago. It's a $150 million venture firm. We've been focused really from the beginning, and frankly before we started Sherpa, on the on-demand and sharing economy. We've led investments in companies like Munchery, Uber back in the Series B, Ship, and a bunch of others. So we're incredibly passionate about it. We actually published a report, if you're interested, called The On-Demand Economy. You can get it from Recode, Kara Swisher's website, or just email us at info@SherpaVC. It's about 100 pages of data, kind of Mary Meeker style, on what's going on with the on-demand economy. So after that advertisement, let's move on to the real subject here. So we've got, like I said, a really interesting perspective. What I'd love to do is just go down the line and do a really quick, okay, here's what we do. But then quickly move into the kind of dare to dream. Like, what are you actually doing here? What's the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal? What's it look like in 5, 10 years if you truly crush it, which I think you all will? And then ideally, if you each could tell a funny story, because you all are in some really interesting spaces doing some really interesting things, and I know for a fact you've had some really wacky stuff happen, especially in the early days. So think about something funny and wacky that maybe you learned from, maybe you try not to remember, and keep it light. So why don't we just start here on my right and go into FlightCar.
Great. So I'm Kevin Petrovic, one of the co-founders of FlightCar. And so FlightCar is basically the world's first peer-to-peer car sharing company to operate exclusively at airports. So what that means in practice is that if you're traveling out, like say from Seattle, you can park your car with us for free. While you're gone, we rent it out to other travelers who are coming into the same location. So for the car owner, you get guaranteed free parking for your whole trip, which is really great. You can also make some money depending on how long the car is rented for and what kind of car you've got. Plus, we wash and clean the car as well. And of course, like every sharing economy company, it's all fully insured in case something does go wrong. So right now we've got 3 locations, San Francisco, LA, and Boston. And I'm excited to announce we're actually launching in Seattle tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, we're really excited. All of our customers are saying, Seattle, 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 when are you going to be here? So we're finally going to be here after a rather protracted processing and getting started. So I think, are we doing all these things at the sort of back-to-back?
Sure. Yeah. You got the mic.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
or you can pass. We can come back to you.
Well, no, I'm just so I think with this kind of company, you know, there's a lot of things that can go wrong with cars, you know, and since we're still a very, very young company, you know, I think it's been a learning process the entire way. You know, I haven't really ran any kind of startup before this, and haven't really had a lot of experience personally with a lot of the regulatory and you know, city, airport, government challenges that we sort of encounter. So I think one of the most frightening moments I think we've had with FlightCar since the very beginning was we're actually in litigation with the airport at SFO over sort of permitting and what it means to be a sharing economy company and what it means to be a rental car company. So we had this, you know, when we started our location there, there were a lot of questions surrounding the permits, and we really had this mindset where we sort of had to go in right away. And so we sort of ignored a lot of the permitting and a lot of the details that needed to go in. And as you can imagine, for like a conservative, city government, that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. So, we were operating and sort of going back and forth on the permits. And I think the city sort of assumed that we were going to wait to get everything done. But no, we started right away, even though we had none of the permits to do it. So sort of that relationship with cities, and it got to the point at one time where they sent police officers to our location to try to shut it down and scare our employees away. That was really crazy, and it flew halfway across the country to sort of calm everyone down and sort of boost the morale. But I mean, it's really been a great learning process, and just sort of understanding these little things that go into it has been really, really important, and I think that will help us going forward.
Very cool. Very cool. Thanks. Jen?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So Couchsurfing is a platform that connects a community of travelers, over 9 million travelers in almost every country in the world. And they do a variety of things through the platform. The one thing we're best known for is finding you a host, someone to stay with in a particular place. So I land in Seattle, I can look and see if there's someone who might be interested in hosting me in their home. And the emphasis with Couchsurfing is really on a person who's hosting me rather than the emphasis being on the space. So Couchsurfers tend to spend time together, really show each other around, stay up all night talking, laughing, drinking tequila, whatever. And so it's really a kind of platform for sharing your life, sharing your culture. The other thing that Couchsurfers do is what I like to call kind of dropping into a city and having an instant social life. So there are events and activities all over the world that are set up through the system. About 100,000 people a month attend Couchsurfing events, and in about 400 cities worldwide, there is an event at least once a week. So I land in Seattle yesterday, I pick up my phone, I can see that there's a happy hour tonight, there's a bunch of Couchsurfers meeting for coffee on Saturday. So it's kind of an on-demand social life with the perspective of travel anywhere you go. And as you can imagine, anecdotes galore. I did actually stay up with some couch surfers drinking tequila in a very, very small space a couple of weeks ago, but we'll leave that there. So the first time I hosted couch surfers, we got plenty of stories, but I think it's better to tell my own. I managed to triple book my house. So for whatever reason, I had 3 women coming to stay who were all sort of, in my mind, approximately the same. They were mostly in their mid-40s. They were traveling alone, and they had the same area code for whatever reason. So about halfway through my workday, I realized that I was talking to different people, and I was going to be picking one up at the bus station, but this other one was asking me to pick her up somewhere else. Couch surfers often, sort of go the extra mile and help each other out that way. So I suddenly realized I had 3 people that I'd promised their own bedroom to. So I had to quickly sort of double back and I have a couch, and figure out a way to scramble to get everybody together. And we ended up all having this huge, crazy, big dinner, lots of laughter, lots of wine, lots of fun. And the 3 ladies who were staying with me went on to sort of hang out and explore San Francisco, where I live, for the next couple of days together. So it's this, it creates these kind of wonderful, unexpected, serendipitous experiences.
So Kevin, I'm kind of expecting your funny story to be the Couchsurfing meets FlightCar, where someone's like, hey, I can just get this car and sleep in the back seat and just take care of all of my needs. So has that ever happened? Have you ever had a car return with a pillow in the back?
Even if I did know of a situation, I wouldn't admit it, because we do try to tell vehicle owners that their cars are well taken care of, so,
Nothing, a little WD-40, Windex,
Yeah. That's why we clean the car before and after, It's well thought out.
A little air freshener up on the...
If I see any couch surfers listing FlightCar spaces on the service, I'll let you know.
All right,
Does
pets.
that qualify a car?
It might.
So I'm Aaron Easterly. I'm the CEO of Rover. Rover is a dog sitting community. So instead of taking your dog to a kennel and feeling really guilty when you travel, you can go use Rover. Likewise, instead of imposing on your friends, family, and neighbors, you can go use Rover. On the BHAG, our view, we have a little bit different view on our industry. The industry for overnight dog care in the US is about $6 billion, give or take, just US, just dogs. But it only has 5% utilization. So 95% of the time dog owners travel, they don't use a commercial solution. So if that number were 100%, you'd be over a $100 billion industry, just US, just dogs. So it's one of these industries that's just remarkably broken. I used to think advertising was a broken industry. It turns out pet care is even more broken. So, we look at the opportunity not so much as solving that issue. We look at the opportunity as pet ownership. When we talk with our 40 nonprofit partners about the #1 reason that people who love dogs never get a dog, it's concern about what they're going to do with their pet when they travel. The #1 reason that dogs get surrendered to shelters is life circumstances have changed, and they don't know what they can do with their dog. And so, that's how we measure long-term success, is actually pet ownership rates in the US. And the reason why we care about that is I actually challenge anyone to name a development in the history of mankind that has done more to improve humans' happiness on a sustained basis than the domestication of dog. Seriously. Industrial Revolution, net negative. You look at average lifespans, neutral. Average income, it's an upside-down U-shaped curve. After you get enough that you can feed yourself and clothe yourself, it tends to actually create more stress and unhappiness. And so maybe music, maybe the invention of fire are the only things that are comparable. And yet only 40% of households have a dog. And so we want to bring that, that enrichment of life to everyone. In terms of a funny story, so a lot of us are, at the company, are dog lovers. I was tempted to bring up my 4-pound Pomeranian, although one of our investors pointed out, you're already unlikable, Aaron. If you bring out that dog, by comparison, you're going to look even worse. But I have a 4-pound Pom I love, and so we're active sitters on the site. And in the early days, I had someone come to me and to look at the house, make sure her dog got along with my dog, and 45 minutes later, she was still there. And I had shown her every closet, the backyard. I'm like, what else can I tell you? And she's like, well, my dog Safi really likes humans. I'm like, well, that's good. Dogs generally bond with humans. I like dogs, that works. Like, well, my dog Safi really needs to be close to a human at night. It's like, no problem. My dog sleeps in the room with me. He's like, well, my dog Safi really needs to sleep on the bed. I'm like, I have a 4-pound Pom, sleeps on the bed, no problem. It's like, well, my dog Safi doesn't sleep so much on the bed, she sleeps in the bed. And I'm like, okay, Caramel doesn't do that, but short-haired dog, maybe gets a little cold. Again, it's like, well, it's really important that there's skin-to-skin contact.
No.
Did you just ask me to sleep naked next to your dog? And it turns out that, similar to children and similar to raising a child, the spectrum on beliefs on what people need, want, must have is unbelievable. And every day at the company is an opportunity to discover something like, well, who knew?
That's an awesome story. Jen, you've got a lot of check boxes on the site, like smoking, non-smoking, sofa bed. Is skin-to-skin contact also one of your check boxes?
Not yet, no.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Definitely not.
All right. Okay, last but not least, Brooke, tell us a little bit what's going on at what's that company called again?
Uber. So for those of you that don't know, Uber is an on-demand car service that has operating in, I think, over 250 cities now worldwide. I'm a general manager there, and I oversee Seattle and the surrounding region. So Uber has been definitely a crazy ride, as you all know and probably have seen through the news, and it's a super exciting company to work for, and I think where we're headed, we started with transportation and we'll stay in transportation. We're revolutionizing so many transportation markets across the world, but you are also seeing us dabble in other products and other spaces. So in LA, we're doing Uber Fresh, where we're delivering food. In New York City, we have Uber Rush, where we partner with the bike couriers. So I think in looking long-term at Uber, it will be transportation, but it will be so much more than that as well. And funny stories, I don't know if I can beat that one, but I will say, Uber also participates and dabbles in fun marketing activities such as ice cream, and we've done trees last Christmas, and we did Kittens, and so Uber Kittens was something we ran out of Seattle last year, and it was an on-demand kitty snuggle party. But if you can imagine, the original concept of Kittens was brought to me as an Uber full of kittens. So imagine a black car rolling up, and you open the door and there's tons of small kittens just waiting for you to cuddle with you inside the car. We kind of sat there, and instead of, I think that's one of the great things about Uber, is instead of saying that's a terrible idea, we iterated on it and found an idea that would actually functionally work, and that's how we ended up with Kittens.
Had FlightCar been running in Seattle, you could have just used a FlightCar and loaded up with some kittens and then drive that around for the day. Just kidding. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you guys for the quick snapshot and the dare to dream, the BHAG. A couple of you mentioned market sizes. You all are taking on Goliath opportunities, TAMs, total addressable market. I'd be curious to know, and I know all of us are curious to know, what are your metrics for success? How in the world do you know if you're achieving your objectives, these massive goals? What are your favorite KPIs that you look to say, you know what, we are tracking, we are succeeding, near term and maybe longer term? Give us some of the secrets of success and frankly, some of the lessons learned where you just did something really stupid and learned from your mistakes. And it's a jump ball, so feel free to
I'll take a hack at it. So fundamentally for us, there's a couple metrics, and repeat usage is a really good one. And it's one thing for people to try the service. It's another thing for them to come back, and ideally come back more and more frequently. And so we've been very excited about the frequency of repeat usage, but our new customers are ever more loyal, which is really cool. When every new group of customers you get come back more frequently than the previous group. Most businesses aren't that way. Sometimes the most zealous advocates are the early adopters. And so that's a metric we look at. Another one we look at is, sorry for using the technical term, fill rates. Like if you start the process, what % of the time do you actually successfully find your perfect match? And that's really important to us. And it's actually really relevant for us, but less relevant for an on-demand service where there isn't as much an inherent differentiation in the provider. And back to the point about the 95% of dog owners don't use commercial solutions when they travel, the other metric we look at is what % of our customers are coming from that group. And so if that % is high, so like someone is actually saying, I'd rather use this solution than my free neighbor next door, you're doing something right. And we've been, we're a little bit above 50% of our customers are coming from that audience. Hopefully that will continue to grow.
So you're building, obviously, a marketplace. A lot of you are building a marketplace, highly fragmented supply, highly fragmented demand. In that repeat rate, how do you keep people from finding that great host and just saying, hey, I'll just, give you a call. Let's skip the 20%.
Yeah, it's
Uber had this issue early on, right? There was a policy to these car guys. They couldn't hand their car to the driver. Well, now passengers don't want those cars because in Uber's case, you're using it so often, you don't want to bother calling and organizing. But dog vacations are a little different. Dog stays are a little different, where it's kind of like once a month, once a quarter, once a year. How do you prevent that?
The way we look at, I guess the technical term for that is disintermediation. The way we look at the risk there's 3 drivers of disintermediation. Geographic proximity. If I'm transacting with my neighbor, I'm more likely to try and pay them in person than if I'm transacting with someone in France or something like that. I'm not going to take a flight to France with the hopes of negotiating a side deal, after the fact. Then the nature of the service, is it recurring or episodic? If it's the same transaction every day at the same time, disintermediation is more likely to happen than if it's something that, it's going to happen a couple times a year. Sometimes it's with the same person, sometimes it's not. And then finally, whether or not there's an opportunity for the platform to add value. If the platform actually facilitates the delivery of the service, makes the service better, then disintermediation is much less risky. For us, the geographic proximity is a risk, so we really focused on the other 2. And we focused on all the ways to make the platform instrumental in care delivery. So we have 24/7 vet consultation on the site, photo sharing, music videos that get shared, all that gets incorporated to how we rank sitters, comprehensive insurance, tags that go on dogs, just in case a dog would just pull itself off a leash. Making the value add during service delivery such that no one wants to go off, no one wants to pay in person, is really important to us. I think it's more of a risk in our business than the on-demand services. If you're relying on Uber to tell you where to go next as a driver, it's really difficult not to use that.
That's right. No, it's definitely an advantage of Uber to have that on-demand. You don't really care who the driver is. You just need something right then and there.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we definitely don't have as big of a problem with that as we did in the beginning.
And what metric are you kind of waking up every morning and looking at to make sure Seattle's on track?
There are a lot of metrics. Obviously, there's some basic metrics of completed trips and how many riders there are. But I think what's interesting about our model is that there are 2 sides to it. There are the drivers, and then there are the riders. And so you're constantly having to monitor both of those metrics and then pull different levers depending on which one is, if you're undersupplied or if you need demand. And so you're constantly reviewing both of those metrics and trying to keep both sides stable in order to make sure that you're supplying the trips that the riders need and that the drivers are there and staying there. So, but I agree with you in that the repeat business. So one thing that we're looking at that we really believe in is kind of this evolution of transportation in cities, and we see people getting rid of their personal cars, and we see them using Uber in conjunction with alternative forms of transportation. So that repeat ridership, how often is someone riding? When Uber first launches in a city, there's always a huge weekend demand and a lower midweek demand, but as a city matures, we see people evolving and utilizing it and working it into their everyday lives and using it to get to work, or they might take the bus to work and then use Uber to get home. So very obsessed with the repeat ridership metric right now.
One of the keys to Uber's success has been, as you in your opening remarks, launched markets, number of cities you're in. Just talk for 30 seconds or a minute about the playbook that Austin and team have built and how you guys can just crank out cities and kind of what you've learned in building that playbook, and as an executioner of that playbook, what it's like.
Sure. I mean, it is fast. When we first started, the KPI and launch was always kind of how quickly could we get cars on the road. And so you come in and we have launchers that we essentially send into a city, and they start by hiring the team, and they get supply on the road.
Are these launchers a team based in San Francisco that travels to every new market?
Yeah, it's very...
Sounds like a SWAT, a tiger team that comes in.
These people travel, I mean, they're loosely based in San Francisco. Some of them are on the road, almost the entire year. Amazing people, amazing team, and definitely an interesting job because you're constantly coming into different markets, and they're extremely diverse. They speak tons of different languages, and they're coming into markets that they've never seen before. They're trying to hire the local team. They are finding supply. And if you think about it, like a great story is when she launched Seattle. So Austin Guide is one of the original Uber employees and the head of launch and the head of pro at Uber right now. And when she came into Seattle, she couldn't find no drivers would agree to drive on the system. Like literally, she couldn't find any. And so she looked up their business licenses, I believe, and found their addresses and started door knocking. And so that's how Uber got their first partner in Seattle, is she knocked on the door and begged this driver to just try it, please just try it. And so, I think it really is, it's all about hustle. Now we see some city teams are taking on some of the launch responsibilities, but they're doing the same thing. As they're coming into the city, they're getting cars on the road as quickly as possible, and they're making sure that it's a reliable service as quickly as possible.
That's awesome. That's great. So coming back down on this end, kind of metrics of success, Kevin. Jen, you're a tough one because it's not revenue because you give your thing away for free. So we'll save you for last on what your metric is.
You money guys.
Right. You Marxists. So what is the what's kind of the magic of your success, and as you think about launching an airport and measuring your success and KPIs?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question because we look at it in a lot of different ways. The classic sort of conventional view in the rental car space is revenue, right? It's all about the money. It's all about the revenue. But I think because we have that two-sided marketplace element, there really is a whole lot more to it. And because of the sort of transient nature of our supply, if one person might have a trip and then their next trip might be in 4 months or 6 months, we have a really, really difficult supply issue. And so that's why we focus a whole lot of our effort and energy on supply and getting vehicle owners into the system. So, we've got our standard airport program. We're coming up with new programs and new initiatives all the time where we can make FlightCar an attractive sort of program or company for different people. Maybe some of those same customers who used to drive their car downtown and now are switching to Uber, maybe those people, they're paying for long-term parking, for like a garage in the city, and they no longer need the car. So why not turn to the FlightCar monthly program where, we give you a guaranteed payment for your car, and you can also get some free rental days if you want to take a road trip. So stuff like that, just finding more ways to get supply and more, sort of days of the car on the lot. I think that's really one of our key metrics.
So you're saying, so I can, even if I'm not going to the airport, I can just give you my car. And
exactly.
You can take it over and.
It's almost an Uber-like service, right? We come to your house, we pick up the car, you get a guarantee check every month. You don't have to think about it at all. It's really, really easy. We take care of everything. And that's one of the things that we've done to try to get a more stable base of supply, because we found that people, it's really easy to market to people who want rentals. People are searching for that all the time. But if you're going to the airport, usually you're just, here, let me go to the airport parking lot, let me put that in the GPS, done. It's harder to find those people. So that's where we focus. But ultimately, I think one of our key goals is to expand to more locations so we can get people on both sides of the market for every single trip. We want to see you parking your car at your home base, and then wherever you go, renting a FlightCar on the other end. I think that's going to be a huge part of our development and just sort of building our community base and making people more and more trusting of FlightCar and more willing to give up their car. Sort of this two-sided interaction.
That's right. The sofa panelists, not the chair panelists, but the sofa panelists here all have this phenomenon where the users become the deliverers and vice versa. The hosts become the guests, et cetera. So it's pretty awesome when you can get that flywheel going. Metrics, how do you measure success other than happiness?
Happiness.
Stuff.
World peace. Borderlessness. No, we actually do look at revenue. So Couchsurfing is primarily free, but we have an optional membership fee where you can upgrade your profile to a verified profile. And so that's one. But again, I think echoing a lot of what the other panelists have said, we look primarily at, as far as core KPIs at engagement metrics. We want people coming back. We want them sort of making Couchsurfing a core and almost indispensable part of their travel experience. And that's really where I see this headed, is when you're on an adventure trip or a long trip, or you're going to remote places or even very common cities, but you may be on an extended journey, is Couchsurfing something that you have to have? And that's sort of where I see this going. So we look at engagement, we look at success rate. Are we successful in putting people together to have successful stays and successful nights? And that's, as you both know, or as you all know, there are lots of complex factors that feed into that.
So we're running really tight on time, so keep me honest, and if we can go over a few minutes, somehow let me know, because I could be up here for another hour with you guys. This all sounds great. Massive TAMs, disruption, we're making the world wonderful for consumers. It's not all rosy, right? So from hammers to horn dogs to wrecks to rabies, there's things go wrong. And this is trust. This is your brand at risk here. Do you guys have crisis management teams ready to go? How do you think about the inevitable murder, death, rape? It's going to happen because it happens anyway, right? These are humans we're talking about. And we're just simply providing a service that happens every day outside of your companies. Of course, it's going to happen within your companies. Yet you are introducing an entirely new concept to people, a trust that never existed, jumping in the backseat of an Uber X. Giving your car or your loved pet to a stranger who might be sleeping in bed with them. Handing off your precious set of wheels that you've waxed since the age of 18, and of course, sleeping on someone's sofa. How do you deal with this? Lose sleep.
So, I do lose sleep over all kinds of things, but we do have a dedicated trust and safety team. It's a huge priority for us. Member safety and handling anything that may come up, and also working to continue to build the system in such a way that it does everything it can to make sure that people stay safe out there is really important. We have a pretty robust safety center on the website that talks about how to couch surf safely, the things to look for, what to do, what not to do, how to get comfortable. And I think one thing that occurs to me often when thinking about couch surfing and safety, or thinking about safety with these models in general, is that we are very, very dependent on each other all the time. We're dependent on each other and on strangers when we're on the freeway. We're dependent on each other and on strangers when we're walking down the street. So there is this notion that this is very different, and it is in certain ways, absolutely. But it's also, kind of like life. So using common sense, doing, especially when you're, couch surfing is very much like being out there in the world. You gotta be street smart and do things that make sense for keeping yourself comfortable. The site has all of the, referencing systems and that sort of thing. We encourage people to really read through things carefully, to get to know their potential hosts or surfers a little bit through online interaction, potentially meet in a public place, that kind of thing. But couch surfing, I'm often struck by how it can be a very safe way to travel. So I'll often talk to single women travelers, for example, who are venturing into parts of the world where it may not feel particularly safe or welcome for single women, but they're staying with families, or they're staying with other women hosts, or they're meeting other sort of intrepid couch surfers and venturing off together. So that kind of thing, I think, is something that people don't often think about in terms of the safety side of the story.
And then Uber offers insurance for drivers. FlightCar does this, or insurance for riders. FlightCar does the same. Is there a pet protection program?
Yeah, obviously insurance, and we do have a dedicated trust and safety team to your specific question. But it's one of the reasons we chose the business model we did. The more common cop-out of a lot of companies in care spaces is to have a subscription business model or a lead generation business model, because then they're like, oh, what happens after the contact happens, we don't need to be worried about. We wanted to be involved because we wanted to collect the data. We wanted to figure out how to improve the service. We wanted to figure out who did a really good job driving repeat usage. And so we chose a difficult path because it was difficult, but because there was information required to make it better.
And I think that's one of the most important things to think about in all of our businesses. Having it be safe and having everyone be protected makes those customers come back, makes that repeat business, and is the longevity of our businesses. And so it's in our best interest. That
focus is going to make it safer than the alternatives people are previously more comfortable with, ironically. Exactly. So thank you guys. The Academy music is playing over here on my left shoulder. So thank you guys so much for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming up.